Okay, I will go ahead and get started. Welcome to the August 2026 meeting of Science, Scripture, and Reason. We have a good friend back with us, Steve Willing, and Steve is Steve is a man for all seasons. I think he has spoken to us on multiple topics, and we really appreciate his insight and wisdom. So, thank you, Steve, for being here. For those of you who don't know Steve, he's a board certified diagnostic radiology and neuroradiologist with a medical degree from Medical College of Georgia and an MBA from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He held faculty positions at the University of Louisville, University of Alabama at Birmingham, and Indiana University, where he taught and practiced diagnostic and interventional radiology. Currently, he's clinical neuroradiologist at Children's of Alabama and a consultant in radiology for Tenwek Hospital in Kenya. He's also a visiting scholar with Reasons to Believe and an adjunct professor of divinity at Regent University. So you can see he is a man of multiple talents, and we appreciate that he's here. He's also an author. He wrote Superbia, The Perils of Pride, The Power of Humility, and he is a frequent blogger on his site, The Soggy Spaniel, where he and the Spaniel have words of wisdom for the rest of us. So Steve is here today to talk about AI from 0 to 60. So Steve, thank you for bringing us up to speed, so to speak. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, let me start. Okay, this is the sharing working.
Yes.
Let me explain how this talk developed. This is a version of a talk that I gave at the Christian Medical and Dental Associations at their annual meeting in April. A little over a year ago, I first started using ChatGPT around May of last year, so about a year and a half as a heavy user. And into the summer, I suggested, as they were planning the program for the CMDA, how about a general talk on AI? Just how to get started in it. Nothing about the moral, spiritual, apocalyptic, utopian, ethical ramifications, but just a how-to for doctors who are uh, getting started in it. As the year progressed, I realized that it was happening so fast. By the time the meeting rolled around, there weren't going to be any doctors who were not using it. I think in the last 12 to 18 months, the penetration has gone nearly maybe 90% of US adults. So I adapted the talk and said, okay, I'm going to change this, make an executive decision. I'll split it up. I have three sections. I'll have a section at the beginning, tips for beginners. I'll have a middle section for people who are average users, and I'll throw some stuff in at the end for people who are heavy users who might want to go to the next level. So that's what I'm going to do today. And so I'm a doctor. I use AI a lot. I'm sort of a lifetime geek, and that's kind of my main uh, contribution to this field. My only credential is that I'm a geek. I'm not really an early adopter, but when I know something is around to stay, I try to learn it. And if it's useful to me, I try to master it. So you'll encounter a lot of words and it can get confusing. AI is not just one thing. When people say AI, they usually mean generative AI, the chatbots that write and reason. It's called generative because it generates text or pictures. A chatbot is the interface. It's the way most people interact with the service. But there's also predictive AI, the kind that screens job applicants or flags a credit charge as fraud. If you've seen Minority Report with Tom Cruise, that's predictive AI at work. And it's even less trustworthy than the one in the movie. Then there's agentic AI, which can actually do things for you, and companion bots, which are engineered to imitate humans and mess with your mind. Personal AI is exactly what it says. It's something that runs on your own computer. It's trained on what you choose. And I'll come back to that at the end. It's a specialized form of generative AI. Everything today is going to be about generative AI, the large language models. That's where most of the practical applications are right now. Um, Now, normally at this point in the talk, I ask for a show of hands who's used any of these in the last month. By the time I gave this talk, practically everybody in the room raised their hand. Um, it's easier to ask now, has anybody not used it yet? I'm not getting a response, but okay. Hundreds of millions use these every week. It's already built into a lot of the apps you already use, Microsoft operating systems. Your cell phone has it. Siri is supposed to be AI, not very much. Most employers are using it in the medicine. It's integrated into transcription systems and hospital information systems. But one thing that's worth establishing before we get into chatbots, AI is not new. It's been running in the background of your life for years. Your email spam filter is machine learning. So is the fraud alert that pings you when your card gets used 2 states away. The recommendations you get on Netflix and Amazon, the ETA and Google Maps, the autocomplete finishing your sentences, the face recognition that sorts your photos, all of this is AI. ChatGPT made AI visible to the public, but it didn't invent it. So where does this kind of conversational, generative kind of AI actually help? Think of 5 buckets: writing and drafting, research and inquiry, summarizing, learning and explanation, and planning or organizing. We'll spend most of our time in the first two because that's where you get the traction the fastest. But first, there are a lot of objections that people raise. They get a lot of traction. It hallucinates. Well, guilty as charged. We'll talk about exactly what that means and what to do about it. It will take my job. It certainly will change a lot of jobs, but the people who do best won't be the ones who ignore it. They'll be the ones who learn to work with that. They've been predicting the demise of my specialty of radiology for quite some time now, and there's still a continuing job shortage. Um, I don't trust it. Well, that's good. You shouldn't, not blindly. Ronald Reagan used to quote the Russian proverb, "Doверяй, но проверяй," trust but verify. I'll offer tips on what to verify and what you can safely rely on. Or, I don't have time. That's exactly why you need it. The people who learn these tools will get time back. The ones who don't will spend the next decade watching their colleagues work half as hard. I structured this talk around 3 levels of AI use. The first is convenience. You're using AI to save small amounts of time on routine tasks. Call it curiosity, too, for those who haven't really started. This one's for the novices. Stage 2 is capability. You're getting reliable, repeatable value from the tools. Call it confidence. This one's for the light users. And stage 3 is cognitive extension. You're using AI to think better, not just work faster. This one's for established users who want to up their game. Most people I encounter are somewhere between stage 1 and stage 2. My goal is to get you there and show you what stage 3 looks like. Let's start with the 5 steps for the newcomers and light users. Take a quick glance so you know what's coming. I'll start with what AI is good for. Just look down there. We'll go through these one at a time. As of 2026, it's really good at 4 things: synthesis, drafting, and explanation, and structured inquiry. That's where you want to start. If you have a pile of information and you need to turn it into something readable, AI is really excellent. If you need something complicated explained in plain English, AI is excellent. If you need to draft an email, a letter, a summary, it's there for you. And if you want to think through a decision systematically, it's a helpful partner. Where it gets weaker is hard factual accuracy, authoritative citations, and anything that requires replacing your own judgment. We'll come back to all of these. When should you not use it? Don't use AI when the stakes are high and you don't have time to verify the output. Don't use it for authoritative citations without independently confirming the source exists, and more on that in a minute. Be cautious when you have context that it doesn't have. If you watched a situation unfold for years, You have knowledge it can never have. It's working from words on a screen. You're working from the whole picture. So never use it as a substitute for your own judgment. AI can create art, music, and original stories, but it's not genuinely creative. Whatever it outputs is a product of what you tell it and ask it to do and what it learned from its training. There's a good bit of debate in Christian publishing on whether or not to allow the use of AI, and there are good arguments pro and con, and if you want, we can take that up in the Q&A later. These are not arbitrary cautions. They follow directly from what the technology actually does, predict plausible text, not retrieve ground truth. AI changes how you approach a problem. The old way, you hunted for sources, pulled them together, then wrote it up, one step at a time, and it took a while. The new way, you start by asking good questions, refine the answers as you go, push back on anything that looks off, and then make the call. The AI does the legwork, you do the thinking. That's a division of labor that I can live with. Okay, here's an example. The old way, I want to understand a new tax rule, so I read 3 articles, piece them together, then write my own summary. The new way, I ask for the rule in plain English as it applies to my situation, refine it to my case, ask what I'm missing, and then decide. This might be the most important thing I say today, so I want it to land. AI is not an oracle. It's an affable colleague who is usually right, sometimes wrong, but always confident. That's not a knock on the technology. It describes most experts I've really ever known. The key word here is confident. AI doesn't hedge when it's guessing. It sounds just as certain when it's fabricating a citation as when it's accurately summarizing a fact. So verify when the stakes are real. I'll be saying that a lot. And it's not just citations. We've had trouble like legal briefs being filed with non-existent cases or journal articles being published with non-existent citations, but it can also, everyday problems that can make up answers. If you're troubleshooting why your car isn't doing something or why something's not working on your phone, oftentimes the first answer is flat wrong, and you just have to keep coming back and working with it. The people who really get burned by AI tend to be the ones who come looking for confirmation, not information. If you approach it wanting to be proven right, it will usually oblige. But that's not the AI's failure, it's ours. If you come to the AI with a conspiracy theory and you want it to be true, it will give you 100 reasons why you're right. You can get past that, and I'll explain how in a few minutes. So where do you start? Notes, letters, summaries. This is kind of the low-hanging fruit, turning a rambling voice memo into clean minutes. If you get a long document, you can scan it and summarize it rather than reading it. Increasingly, I get all these email newsletters. I use a little thing on the iPad at the top of the screen that summarizes it for me in 3 sentences. It lets me make a quick decision whether I want to read that or not, because I receive daily way more than I can read in a day. Drafting the reply you've been putting off, condensing a 40-page report into 1 page, explaining something unfamiliar in plain English, rewriting a stiff paragraph so it sounds like a human, which is ironic, but yeah, it can smooth out your writing. If you do nothing else from this talk, go home and use AI in your next painful email or letter. You'll be a convert. I wouldn't recommend it on something that's deeply emotional or sensitive, but if you're interacting with a business, for instance, it can be very helpful. You get out of AI what you put into it, and the quality of your prompt determines the quality of the output. 4 principles here. First, specify your audience. Are you writing for an expert or for your grandmother? You get very different outputs. Second, request a format. Do you want a bulleted list, a table, an email, a memo, whatever you need? If you don't specify, you get the AI's default. Third, include all the pertinent details. The more context you can give it, the better the output. And fourth, add constraints on the length and the tone. A structured prompt produces a structured answer. And one safety rule, don't paste in sensitive personal, financial, or confidential information. The model doesn't need that to reason well. And remember, sensitive data can hide in a document or even an image you upload, not just the text you type. Now, they will tell you that your privacy is protected, but and it's encrypted in transmission, and your own work is not used for the training unless you opt in. But it's always whether you want to take the risk. In medicine, we don't use import anything that would have patient identifiers unless it's a HIPAA approved application. You can use AI like a very fast, very well-read colleague who's read everything and forgotten nothing. Man, I wish I knew somebody like that, but never met him. Like questions like, what are my options for financing this? What's the current thinking on that? What are the arguments on each side? And you can ask this, whereas without the AI isn't going to get angry at you or get its feelings offended. You might ask somebody who has a different political viewpoint than you for the arguments, but they're likely to take it very personally and get very emotionally involved, and it could that conversation could escalate. That's never going to happen with an AI. So it's a very safe thing to explore other viewpoints. Make the query as specific as you like. Ask a vague question, you get a vague answer. Ask a specific question, you get a specific answer. That's just how questions work. But there's one place AI blows away a traditional web search. You can make the question as long and detailed as your heart desires. You remember using Google, you're always guessing, okay, what search terms are going to get me the answer that I'm looking for. With an AI chat bot with ChatGPT Claude, you don't have to worry about that. You can spell out all the parameters, exactly what you're looking for in free text. Your question can be a paragraph, it can be 3 paragraphs. The search results, it's going to return what you've asked for. And that's a huge step forward. Besides it, you're not then getting a list of web pages coming back to you that you have to sort through and read one at a time to see if any of them are relevant. It will extracts the information and just hands back to you exactly what you're looking for. It may be wrong, but it'll tell you exactly what you're looking for. And finally, know your tools. You don't have to memorize this. You can learn by doing. For general use, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and Grok. All of these are capable, all have trade-offs. Claude and ChatGPT are the strongest all-around writers and reasoners. Gemini is a natural pick if you live in Gmail and Google Docs. Grok is supposedly the one to reach for on breaking news since it's wired into X. And if you specifically need an answer with real checkable sources, look at Perplexity. It's built to search the live web and hand you the citations you can actually click, which is not something a general chatbot reliably does. So let's move on to stage 2. You've got the basics. Now let's make it reliable and repeatable. Here I'll focus on 4 essential practices: iterative prompting, custom instructions, spotting nonsense, and decision rules for your platform choice. Let's begin with what I'd call iterative prompting. This is the single biggest efficiency gain most users leave on the table. When the first answer, most people will ask a question, take the answer, and then go on to whatever their next thing was, whether it's a task or playing games or pursuing another subject. The best users, you get the most out of it if you don't stop with the first question, but you ask follow-up questions. So if the first answer is close but not right, you don't start over. You just continue the conversation. You say, Claude, I think you're wrong on this, or Claude, I don't know what you mean. Ask it to shorten, reformat, adjust the tone if it's a document, reconsider a point, argue with it. I do that all the time. And one good session beats 5 restarts. The AI holds the context of everything said so far in the chat up to a point. So use that. You're the editor, and it's the draft engine. That said, there is a point of diminishing returns. Long conversations, say when you scroll down, it's page after page after page, maybe, I don't know how many, 10, 20 questions with long answers. The AI has a finite, what we call context window. Think of that as a whiteboard with a fixed size. As the conversation fills it, the earlier content gets compressed or dropped. Answers start getting vaguer, more inconsistent, and occasionally contradictory, and it slows down. So start a fresh conversation when the AI starts to contradict itself, when it's saying something opposite what it said earlier, when it seems to be forgetting what you talked about earlier, or when the answers are getting worse, or when the task changes, say you want to dig into a completely new subject. So one task, one thread. When the work changes, start over. But starting over doesn't mean starting from scratch. Most platforms do have memory. They'll remember your role, your preferences, and your communication style across sessions without having to repeat yourself. What you're shedding when you start fresh is the accumulated clutter of a long conversation, not who you are or how you work. But the memory can be turned off by default. You definitely want to go into settings and turn it on. If the conversation is really long, you can ask the AI to create a handoff. Use that expression handoff and it knows what you mean. It'll print out a summary. You can paste that into a new chat to start clean with a fresh context window. Every major platform lets you set persistent instructions, defaults that apply to every conversation without repeating them. One of its biggest time savers and always a way to dodge some of AI's pitfalls. At a minimum, tell it your role, your preferred verbosity, whether you want short, concise answers or whether you want thorough answers, and your audience level. Whether you're an accountant, a teacher, a small business owner, changes the answer. You might start out wanting comprehensive replies and learn over time you'd rather they were short. My own instructions include things like never be sycophantic, be concise, tell me what I may have overlooked, and stick to my question. Another is flag any information coming from Reddit, which I don't regard as a highly reliable source. So all these things matter. Left to its own devices, especially restricting the questions, AI will happily answer 3 questions you didn't ask. So tell it to be concise and stick to the question if that's what you want. Back to hallucinations. What do they look like? Look for suspiciously tidy answers and look out for agreement. If you assert something wrong and the AI nods along, that's a red flag. These models are trained to be agreeable. It's baked into how they learn. The AI isn't lying, it's doing what it was rewarded for. So if you frame a question on a false premise, you'll get a fluent, confident answer built on that false premise. Garbage in, authoritative garbage out. When something really matters, ask the question cold without your own hypothesis attached. A lot of what these models know comes from summaries and snippets, not the full source. This is true in the scientific literature. If the article's paywalled, you may think that it's scanned the article, but it doesn't. They don't. Claude, Anthropic, and OpenAI, they don't buy journal subscriptions and scan the documents. They scan what's publicly available, which can often be the abstract. So they don't necessarily know the details of the scientific articles you may be searching for, or in my case, the medical articles. So for anything where the detail matters, you have to go read the source. And be wary of specific citations. That's where the danger lies. This has been getting better in my experience from, say, last December, January, when I routinely get false, non-existent citations. And asking it to check doesn't help. It'll just come back and tell you that it was right when it's clear the citation doesn't exist. BS here stands for bovine scat. A finely honed BS detector is your friend and ally. It's also called AI slop. The more you know, the greater your fund of knowledge, the more effective a user you will be because you have to have the area of expertise. So you're safer using AI in an area of your own professional field, whether you're a doctor or an engineer or a scientist or a teacher or a lawyer. You're better off using AI in your field, your area, than an unfamiliar area where you may not know when you're being led astray. Here's some data. This was from earlier this year. At one major meeting in 2025, 53 papers presented contained hallucinated citations that were missed by multiple peer reviewers. Over 50 submissions to the ICLR in 2026 had fake citations each reviewed by 3 to 5 experts who also missed them. And MIT researchers found the models use stronger language, words like definitely and certainly, precisely when they're generating wrong information. Um, I think it's been in Getter. It's not completely solved. Always, even now, the verification burden falls on you. I just submitted a paper to the ASA journal this summer, and I was very careful. I used Claude to research it, but I was very careful to look up every citation and import it into Zotero and app to make sure that they were valid. So that's one is using Zotero or some of these specialized apps, but others are using something like Perplexity, or another way is to copy the title and search for yourself using Google Scholar or the publisher or a library. Sometimes the article exists, but the citation is wrong. It'll just have the wrong journal number or page. Sometimes there never was such an article at all. I've seen both. So which tool for what? Most people don't need a rule, they need a habit. So just pick a tool that lives where you already work and keep one specialist on call for the job it does best. I think it's a good idea. I haven't mentioned it, but if you're using free, you're probably not getting much benefit out of it. The ChatGPT and Claude come in at about $20 a month subscription, about the price of Netflix, and it's opens up so much more that you're able to do. I tend to do most of my work now on Claude, but occasionally I'll flip back and forth for various reasons. And sometimes sometimes ChatGPT is right when Claude is wrong, and vice versa. Every one of these is capable, and they're all converging. And most of these will handle most everyday tasks, but each has a sweet spot. If you drive a Tesla, you're probably having to deal with Grok. I started with ChatGPT and I added Claude last January when I needed to analyze my 90,000 word book and I couldn't upload it to ChatGPT. It exceeded the upload even with a subscription plan. Now today it can, but that got me started in Claude. I still go back to ChatGPT for images, which Claude doesn't support as well. Also, some continuing projects like my personal training. I have a project I'll talk about in a minute. And sometimes just go a second opinion. Like I said, in the last 7 days, Chat has fixed some technical problems, like with our car or with the cell phone, where Claude failed me. I usually don't touch the others, but they're popular and play to their own strengths. So now we've arrived at stage 3, and this is where AI stops being a tool and starts being a cognitive partner. Like before, I've got 5 tips, this time to get you into that top 10% of users. These are uploading files, reverse prompting, projects, personal AI, and chaining tasks. So starting with uploading files, the traditional approach is, okay, you read an article or you have a long letter or a long email, you summarize it for the AI, type it into the box, and it works from your summary. The problem is obvious. You might be a slow typist or you risk leaving things out. You burn time summarizing and the AI only ever sees your filter. The better approach, if the information already exists in a file, upload the file. Let the model read the source, not your summary of it. Again, the quality of AI output is directly proportional to the quality of the input. A 3-sentence summary is almost always a worse input than the original document. So stop paraphrasing and start uploading. They can be reports, manual policies, research papers, spreadsheets. Rarely do I ever come across a file that the AI can't analyze. So think about all the things you can upload: PDFs, research papers, contracts, policies, spreadsheets, data exports, even images and screenshots. And if you don't know the Windows screenshot shortcut, which is Windows key Shift S, really want to get that mastered because you can grab something off the screen and paste it right into the chat box. That's one of the most useful things you'll learn all day. If the document only exists in paper, take a picture of it with your phone and upload it. It's really that simple. We want the model to analyze the source, not our summary of it. So don't describe the file, upload it. But still, we'll give it some context. Be specific about what you want it to do with that, what your question is. I've used this for all sorts of things. We were getting a boiler replaced here a year ago, and I uploaded the estimates to Chat GPT, and it analyzed it, told me what parameters I should be looking for, steered me away from a high efficiency unit that showing that the cost of the recovery cost break even would be about 50 years. Sanity check travel itineraries. I use it for Garmin activity files, uploading them regularly. Another good case is user manuals. If you have a PDF that's an operating manual to your television, you know how these go. They can be hundreds of pages, index is sparse, no free text search, and you have to guess the term if you're going to look it up. You can upload this manual to ChatGPT or Claude or one of these, and then ask your question in plain English, and it'll search the document and give you back a straight answer. Very helpful. Reverse prompting, underused and worth your attention. Instead of asking the AI to synthesize information for you, ask it to critique your own thinking, to find the weaknesses in your own argument. What am I missing? Where is this plan the weakest? This is a meaningfully different move. You're not outsourcing thinking, you're pressure testing it. Used well and it makes you sharper. Ask it to steel man the other side. If you're in a debate, if you're a social or political issue or theological issue, if you have a position, ask it to make the strongest argument for the other side. That will sharpen you. And like I said, this can actually be much less threatening than getting a real person who has that viewpoint, who may be very emotionally invested. There's no risk of this degenerating into a ruptured or relationship or tension. Are you leaning towards a big purchase? Ask it to talk you out of it. Or are you leaning against that purchase? Ask it to make the case for it. We've always been able to do that with a colleague, but our friends, our family, everybody's busy and the AI is there 24 hours a day. You can even ask it to explain its own reasoning, why it landed where it did, what it assumed, and where it might be wrong. Philosophers call that metacognition. I call it asking the AI to think about how it thinks. It's one of the more remarkable things these tools do, and a word that'll make you sound very smart at a dinner party. There's a real spiritual discipline hiding in this technique. Asking something to tell you where you're wrong requires you to believe you might be. Not everyone's willing to do that. So projects. Most people use AI as a series of disconnected conversations. Ask a question, get an answer, close a tab, start over next time. That's stage one behavior. Projects change that. A project is a difference between AI that forgets you every time and AI that knows where you left off. It's a persistent workspace. Your goal stays constant. Prior decisions are remembered. Documents accumulate. And when you come back, the work resumes instead of restarting. So without a project, you have scattered chats, repeated uploads, lost decisions, drift. Didn't we already decide that? It doesn't remember. With a project, one ongoing workspace where context builds over time. Projects turn AI from a conversation into a workspace. That they're overkill for one-off questions, but indispensable for a deep dive into a subject, writing something long, compiling research, or preparing a talk. I used one to build this presentation, and for going deep on a single topic, the next step may help even more, which we'll get to in a second. One ongoing project that I started a year ago is a personal fitness. I asked ChatGPT, should I get a personal trainer? Would it be worth it? And would I find a personal trainer that specializes in older patients who at least knows as much as I do, hopefully more. But ultimately, I decided not to. I found, I used Garmin to track my running and cycling. I can upload Garmin files. I had to generate training plans, and it generated a training plan that got me to running a half marathon last September. what happens is within the project, then we have multiple chats, but it will remember all the chats within the project. Documents that I've uploaded can be stored and saved and pulled back later. And it's really impressive what it can do. So that would be kind of one example. Something in your life that you would like a little guidance on, and that's going to be a recurring situation, is ideal kind of thing for a project. Tip number 4, personal AIs like Notebook LM. Think of these as a specific application or projects. You upload a curated collection of guidelines, papers, or other materials and query them as a unified knowledge base. So your static PDF library becomes an interactive reference system. You can ask it questions, request summaries, compare recommendations across documents. With a notebook, the AI trains itself on the sources you upload to the notebook. For instance, you have 40 articles on tax law or some aspect of engineering. The big win here is that your model shouldn't be contaminated by AI slop. Theoretically, it can only answer based on the information you've given it, and that can be quite a benefit. The more controversial the subject, the more misinformation it has to train on. The best known personal notebook is Notebook LM, run by Google, and it's popular with folks that I classify as power users. The last advanced technique then is chaining tasks, and I can illustrate it with a concrete example because I use it to build this presentation. I started with a rough list of topics. I asked Claude to critique the list, to find the gaps, to find redundancies, anything wrong for the audience. So we went back and forth. It pushed back on me and I pushed back on it, and the outline got better with each pass. Then I drafted content, then I refined it, then I distilled it. Each pass did one job and each improved the last. You direct, the AI refines, the output is still yours. And this is where advanced users get disproportionate leverage. And yes, I'm aware of the irony of using AI to build a talk about AI, but that's not a disclaimer. That's the point. Which brings us back to the big objection, will AI replace people? I'd argue that's a false binary. A person plus AI will beat AI alone, and use wisely, beat the same person without it. The presentation I give is, I know my own capabilities, and the presentation that I did here with AI is better than I would have done had I done it all myself. And that's not laziness. I put the same amount of hours in, I just ended up with a better outcome. So parting advice, everything flows. Heraclitus said, Panta rei, you never step into the same river twice. He said that about rivers, but he could have said about that in AI in 2026. Anything I told you today could be half obsolete by next month. Earlier this year, in the space of 2 months, one company alone shipped 4 new models. So how do you keep up without going crazy? You focus on the forest, not the trees. The trends matter. The specific model names and version numbers change too fast to be worth memorizing. Find 1 or 2 reliable sources and stick with them. There's a real cognitive cost to platform hopping. Learn it by using it and let experience guide you, and stay open to new approaches. And the single most practical thing I can tell you is ask the AI to help you learn it. That's not circular, that's how it works. The barriers are low and the upside is real. And this QR code will direct you to a PDF of the original talk at CEMDA. It's not identical, but the basic points are the same. The outline's the same. There are a few extra slides in the CMDA that are more medical related. So thank you. I'll leave this up for a second, and when you're ready to stop sharing, I'll stop sharing.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Well, thank you, Steve. That was very enlightening. I feel like I might be the dinosaur on that QR code, but hopefully I'll be a faster dinosaur soon. So thank you very much. We've got.
Have you used it yet?
What's that?
Have you used any of them yet?
I have, but not. I would use them more indirectly. So I haven't subscribed to anything and used it directly, but I intend to. Now you've definitely convinced me. I need to do that. There's time for questions. So if anyone has a question, either in the room, come on up, or on Zoom, please jump in.
I kind of left it open if anybody wants to talk about some of the other ethical ramifications or any of this, but I'm pretty low key about all of it.
What does AI have to say about that? When you ask AI about ethical ramifications of AI, does that is it insightful?
I haven't challenged it. I expect it would probably come close to regurgitating things like what Dario Amodei has written. He's the president of Anthropic. He wrote two essays that are very influential, got a lot of traction. The first one was The Machines of Loving Grace. That was his first essay about a year and a half ago, about 2 years ago, talking about all the future upsides of AI, but some of it sounded pretty dystopian to me. And then the second one was The Adolescence of Technology, and that one is all on the downsides, potential, biohazards and um, autonomous weapons, mass surveillance, some of the things that we're acutely concerned about. I wouldn't, because it's not a person and it's not going to be defensive. It's not going to say, "Oh, I'm the greatest thing," and don't believe any of them. It'd be kind of creepy if it came back, but I don't think it would.
So you don't think the machines are going to link together and take over the world, huh?
Well, they're probably just like humans. They would start contending with each other for dominance.
So if you were you mentioned the personal trainer. So how would you start with that if someone were to say, I want to figure out a training program or workout program? How would you approach that? Or how did you approach that?
The best way is a little at a time because this is not something you do in an afternoon. This is something you do over a period of months, and it really becomes an ongoing thing. So, like 4 years ago, I had some knee problems and got physical therapy. And about 2 years ago, I had shoulder problems, like a rotator impingement. Had to go through some rehab, and then I just went into ChatGPT. I do wanted a strength and flexibility routine that would take into consideration my past issues and what I need to focus in. The fact that I'm old, I just turned 70 last month. Um, and I'm concerned about maintaining posture and maintaining balance and have come with an all-around exercise plan, a list of routines. And then, I mean, it's been changed at least a dozen times. Go out, I would go and say, okay, he'll say, okay, Bulgarian split squats. Anybody know what that is? And I say, what's a Bulgarian split squat? And it'll explain it to me. And if it's not clear, it'll give you some links. Well, the links may or may not work, but then you go on YouTube and get a description. Or uh, some of the things, were challenging. Um, but the nice thing is you can do your workout, whether you're doing it at 6 in the morning or 8 o'clock at night, you can go in and say, okay, well, this didn't feel good, um, and have it adjusted accordingly. The first routine, I kind of had access to a gym here in Colorado. Then we get home, I am limited to what equipment we have in our basement. I told ChatGPT, okay, this is what we have, and modify it accordingly, and it can do a very good job. If you have a weight set or if whatever you have in your basement, it can tell you to do that. Um, it's but to get started, st start a little bit at a time. Don't try and get everything addressed in the first step.
Mhm. Okay.
I have a comment. It's Belinda here in
Hi,
Oregon.
Belinda.
Hi. So I have been using ChatGPT, I think October 2024, and I see the stages that you have described, and such, and so I'd say I'm probably between the two and the three, maybe at this point. But one of the things that I did with SSR when I was doing the abortion presentation and researching it, I did use ChatGPT um, to kind of help me. I think I just said like, give me the definitions of um, abortion or some of the other terms and such. What I found though, and this goes to your point of like being um, asking questions of information that you are already somewhat familiar with. And so what I was able to detect was that it was very biased. It only told me like the American College of Obstetricians definitions. And so it was only not just secular, but um, but it was only giving me definitions that was biased towards like abortion, or, and such like only a one patient model type of thing. So I think my question would be is, um, boy, if you didn't really know the information, how do you double check yourself in that you don't get led astray, I guess. Um, if you don't know like the resources that are being used.
Well, I think that loopes back to what I said, that you're safest using it in an area that you already have substantial expertise, so you can spot the BS.
Okay, yeah.
For the average user, say the church lady who's going to look up abortion, how do um, you can push back, um, but somebody like that, it's probably better not using it, but just
For
going
that
to a
particular.
place. Yeah,
Mhm.
go to the Christian Medical and Dental Association, which has a lot of good material. I mean, I not, you know, you say when your only tool is a hammer, the whole world is a nail, but
Mhm.
AI isn't the solution to every question. Um, I
Right.
still read magazines. I still read newspapers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I still read books. I mean, I spend a lot more of my day reading primary sources than I do querying AI. And I usually my queries have more to now in medicine it's different. Actually, we have some good stuff, although I think you have to be a practitioner and have an MPI number to get access to it. One's called Open Evidence, and the other one is Doximity, run by Doximity. And they are trained on platforms with refereed literature. And for instance, both of them I went to and asked about what's the quality of evidence for gender affirming care in minors. That's a good test of how political it is. And they both came back very straight up talking about the Cass report and how the evidence has been shown to be very weak. And so that it's possible, but that's within a more of a smaller environment. I think these are again those are would be called local LMs or limited models because they're trained on a specific subset of articles, journals. They're not trained on the internet itself. The models, the training models, they're scanning, they're scraping the web, and so they get all the good sources, they get all the scientific articles, but a lot of scientific articles, especially in humanities or sociology, are just garbage. But they're also getting all the cranks and conspiracy theorists and everything else out there, and it's not necessarily trained to tell what's reliable versus not. So oftentimes you're getting the average of human opinion as it might be expressed on the World Wide Web.
That would be like for a chat GPT versus like an open evidence, do you
Yes.
mean? Or okay. Yeah. Um, does anybody else have a question? Because I'll ask a question about open evidence if you guys
No, go ahead, Melinda.
Oh, okay. So what I've noticed with open evidence, this is, for health professionals and such. I didn't have an MPI because I was too old or something. I didn't like, what is this MPI number? But anyways, I was able to get it through my husband. But anyways, the question that I'm starting to see, okay, is that they're partnering. Open evidence is partnering with certain groups like New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, JAMA, um, and then most recently ACOG, Association of OB/GYNs, which is, um, very secular in the sense. But they're not partnering, say, like with the non, um, uh, or with the life affirming organizations. So I guess I'm just wondering too then, how the queries will be, or what kind of input that we'll get back. Like say for some like maybe a resident that's kind of looking into something. Do you think that it will then be biased and residents might not even be able to tell because they're not skilled enough at that point?
That's a complicated issue with a lot of nuance.
Ah.
They're training on New England Journal. No, we don't want to succumb to the genetic fallacy that just because it's in the New England Journal and because they've gotten extremely political in some of their editorial positions, that it's not reliable. That's kind of a logical fallacy. Any article they have has to be judged on its own merits, regardless of what journal it's showing in. And if it looks like good science, then that's that. But a lot of science isn't,
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's probably not any worse than the current. For somebody who isn't, for somebody who say isn't a committed Christian, or somebody who probably not very different than what is now, because they're going to go to those sources and get the same degree of bias. Um, the AI is probably more like, if you're, I talked about the importance of integrity, of having humility, of a willingness to admit you might be wrong. With an AI, somebody who wants to know the other side has a far better chance of getting it than going around asking people.
I see that. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Ken. I see you there.
Hi,
Ken Wilgman. Hi, Dave.
good to see you. How are you?
Hey, right.
Good, thanks for speaking. As a teacher, I know I'm no longer a teacher, I'm retired, but I know lots of teachers are wanting students to write on their own and be able to do research on their own and not use any of these tools that you're talking about tonight. So a couple questions. One would be, how as a teacher can you even identify that when they are using something that is on the no-no list? And then I guess in terms of education, what's the upside of AI?
Well, when it comes to primary education, at least through middle school, maybe higher, I'm an absolute Luddite. I mean, I think there should be no phones in schools. I think they should not be issuing laptops and Chromebooks to students. I think everything should be done in the old-fashioned way, reading paper books. There's just so much emerging evidence that leads to better education, better outcomes. If they have access to it at home, they're going to do it anyway, but at least the schools shouldn't be facilitating it. I think, anyway, I don't know, maybe you feel differently on that. There are a few things like Pangram has come out that supposedly is very accurate at detecting whether something's written with AI. Most of it comes to honesty. I mean, it didn't suddenly become possible for students to cheat when ChatGPT got released.
That's true.
I mean, they've had ways to
They're very
cheat
creative.
as long as beings have existed. So there's just different ways of doing it. Um, they can have somebody else write their paper. They can have their parents write their paper. They can plagiarize it for somewhere. And, it's kind of the same thing. Before AIs, it was very easy to plagiarize something and nearly impossible, at least for maybe a college professor might have access to tools that could detect it. But, an average, high school English teacher probably going to have tools to search the entire web to see if that article that writing got plagiarized from somewhere. I was just kind of going on. I think there's a lot of nuance to that. I'm pretty much anti-technology. That's my bias. Maybe when they get older, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, maybe let them start using it, but on a case-by-case basis and only when there's a compelling reason to introduce it, which is the opposite of what we do now. We throw the technology at them and look for reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
What is your opinion?
oh, I like the paper, honestly, especially like you said, up to a point. And then the challenge is that what I've heard it referred to as kids nowadays are like technology natives because they were born into it. And so for them, it's speaking their native language. Whereas kids who are not given that opportunity, okay, that sounds positive, but um, then they are actually have a deficit because they don't approach technology with the same type of first language um, abilities if they come later, if it's introduced later. And yet, there's so many benefits from reading regular books and doing that I think for quite a while really outweigh. Um, but yeah, I've seen some of the teachers in their younger 20s or who grew up with technology, and it's difficult as an older person to work with them because they just go from one thing to another, and it's not a big deal where I have to stop and think about it and figure it out, and I still have a lot to learn. So yeah. So I don't know. It seems like it's both and. There's benefits. Um, by high school, I think kids really need this to have some of those tech skills to be able to go into college and compete even for college placements. But so somewhere they have to learn it. And yet it's so pervasive, it seems like, how would they not learn it? Um, so yeah, feel free to, yeah, anyway, anyone else have a question? Okay, Jim.
Yeah, so my question has to do with you mentioned paying subscription for one of these services. What do you actually get? I mean, I've actually tried some of the different tools out there, and I just wonder, what do you actually get when you pay the extra money?
Mostly you get usage. If you're going on a free plan, you will burn it up and then it'll time out on you and say you have to wait 6 hours or something. Where I can work pretty much all day. I've experimented with the different ones, and when I go occasionally when I've field tested some of the higher end ones like Fable, it can burn through my credits pretty quickly. But if I so for instance, Claude and ChatGPT is similar. You can choose which model you're using, and it gives you advice. There's Sonnet, there's Opus, there's Fable. Sonnet is the lowest tier, and it's very fast, and you could probably go all day. When I get up into the higher levels of, say, Opus, and then I can run up credits and time out just the same. That's going to be the main thing. I don't know if there may be if you're using projects, there might be limits on how much documents you could upload or how much you could store. I haven't, you probably have to look that up, but I think it's mostly usage.
I see. Another question was is it called Notebook LM? Something LM that Google does.
Yes.
I looked into that once. Where you can upload your own PDFs and such. Are you actually, is there an issue about uploading PDFs that you paid for that are copyrighted?
It shouldn't be an issue because, I mean, somebody might challenge it. I don't know what their legal basis for, because you still own it, and it's not shared with anybody else. At least it's not supposed to be.
Yeah. One thing I heard about it might have been Google's, but the they advertise about how private everything is, but it seems like I remember hearing about, well, it's private from the point of view is maybe Google staff members or whatever can't access it, but the AI has it. So at some point in the future, they could query the AI and get the information out or something like that. I'm not sure. The privacy issues, I think, you got to be really careful about.
They have big privacy statements, and it's very detailed and nuanced. Generally,
Yeah,
generally I mean, you're one of 100 million people, so
Yeah.
whether it's using your interaction, they don't generally train off of user interactions. That's the party
see.
line. On the other hand, sometimes I've seen it come back with a clearly wrong answer and corrected it and gave it the right answer and told it to remember that. And it said that it would, which seems to go against what they're saying. But so,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I actually had a case where at work, we keep getting phone calls for a different company that has a similar name. And I I decided to start asking the people that were calling, why are you calling this number? Because clearly it's not the same company. It was similar, but not the same. And they said, well, I just asked ChatGPT for our phone number, and this is what it's giving. And so I tried it, and sure enough, if you put in this company name, it'll give our company phone number instead. So I asked it, how do I fix that? And they gave me this really long process that you had to go through. Like you have to go to OpenAI or something and submit a form or something. It's like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to do that because I don't know how. If you've run across anything like that where you found misinformation and you actually want to correct it, but there's no easy way to do it, or
Probably nothing that was that annoying. I probably wouldn't be that highly motivated unless,
Yeah.
like you said, I was getting random phone calls all the time.
Yeah, that's what we're getting right now, and we're
That would
getting
be
more.
super
We're actually
annoying.
getting more wrong phone calls than right phone calls. So, not that we get a ton of phone calls anymore. A lot of it's through email, but still,
You
it's still pretty annoying.
you could ask ChatGPT where it got the number,
Yeah, yeah,
because
sure.
there's two possibilities. One, it is just a hallucination, like some of these fake citations. The other is that, and if does the other company have the same name?
It has the first beginning of the same name, but the rest of it's not the same.
It's
So,
possible that there's, their phone numbers all over the internet, because I have Google alerts me anytime my
yeah,
identity shows up online, and anytime I get something that has a phone number, I have it removed and Google
yeah.
account.
I subscribe to one of those too. It's kind of nice to. I don't know how well it works, but it sure does feel good to be able to have stuff removed.
You could ask ChatGPT where it got the number from, because
That's
it's
true.
probably more likely that it shows up somewhere incorrectly on some database than it just manufacture the number. Because if it was just creating the number, it wouldn't keep creating the same number. If it was a hallucination, it wouldn't keep hallucinating the same number.
Yeah, and it's awful coincidental that the name of the company is very similar. So I just was wondering if it was, I don't know where it's getting the information from, but
Is
yeah.
it similar enough that other people might be typing in the wrong? But you said you did it and you got the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I typed in the other company name and it came up with our address or our phone number. I mean, it did say that it was our company name, but it still came up with that phone with our phone number. So if you looked at it carefully, you would know that it's wrong.
Ah,
But yeah, so whatever.
Can you market to those people?
Market to those people.
Tell them stuff?
No, they wouldn't care about our stuff. So, yeah. What about are there any other? I want to think about ethical questions that would maybe you can think of to talk about, or you hear people talking about authors of books and stuff being, finding their book, the content of their book. Chat GPT could just tell them the content of their book or something like that. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that's
Your copyright problems, maybe, or I don't know.
you better ask a lawyer on that than
Oh, I
me.
see. Yeah.
How would it have worked without AI? Fair use was pretty liberal. As long
Yeah.
as there were limits on how much of a book you can copy and still be within fair use. If you're doing a book review, if you're summarizing a book, that's fair use. Um, Most books you can get from a library, and so almost any book in print you don't actually have to buy if you can get
Right.
it from a library. And if you can get it from a library, is it ethically wrong for ChatGPT? And if they trained it on the model, if they bought the book and then trained the model, that would be different than if they got a pirated version. I don't know. I think there's a lot of nuance to that, and I can
Yeah, there is.
almost um, I kind of it's kind of helpful to me when it has trained on the book because when I'm reading books, I like to interact with ChatGPT. It's like having a professor on my left shoulder. I can ask questions. Reading Eric Hoffer's The True Believer, a book 70 years ago. John Stonestreet talks about this a lot. And I say, well, what do other people think about this book? And I kind of have questions, or I read Rene Girard, and how do other people process them? Because he seems a little sketch to me in some spots. And it's it's kind of helpful to me that the agent knows the contents of the book, but I don't always see that especially newer ones and especially smaller market ones, often it doesn't. It's usually only if it's a major work that it seems very familiar. Anything out of copyright, it's fair game. So I like
Hmm.
Brothers Karamazov, it's okay. But
Yeah.
we did the Colson Fellows program, and some of the books there were required reading for they're kind of probably small print runs. They're pretty niche product, and generally, I think the AI would not be very familiar, probably not familiar with the contents of the book.
What about art or music? I was just thinking about, is it using, you mentioned that maybe you could go to one of the AIs and have it draw you a picture or give you a painting maybe, maybe I don't know, whatever, some sort of art, or maybe the same with music, make me a song or whatever. Is that based on quote stealing from real artists, or do we know that, or?
Not if it generates it de novo. You know, I'll give you a personal example. One of my all-time greatest artist favorites was Karen Carpenter, who died way too young. I thought, wow, if AI could bring back her voice
Oh
and
yeah.
record new songs, that would be so incredibly amazing. But I wouldn't want to do it, but if they did it, I want them to, pay royalties to the foundation or the foundation, whoever
Right,
theirs
right.
are. And I'd be cool with that, but I think it would be wrong. If
Mhm.
no, what if you could do it just for your own personal satisfaction and I never played it or shared it with anybody else? Would it then be right?
Oh, true, true.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I would be awesome if they could, you know, and I think say they can, they brought Carrie Fisher back from the dead in one of those movies.
Yeah,
If they use artist likenesses, they absolutely should pay, get permission and pay
right.
royalties.
Yeah.
Probably everything needs to be taken on a case by case
But
basis,
that
but
is
there's a lot of
helpful.
nuance to that.
Randy mentioned Elvis, but he's still alive, so I don't know what the deal is there. You mentioned Karen Carpenter, and I heard that uh, I saw some YouTube video on how you'll never get a Karen Carpenter these days because all of the songs that are done, they're performances that are done are all auto-tuned now, I guess. So, and you had somebody actually analyzing her waveforms and stuff to see how it wasn't perfect pitch and such, and that was what made it better. And apparently that doesn't happen anymore. Everybody's perfect pitch now because it's all auto-tuned.
I thought the only reason we don't have another Karen Carpenter is because public taste has gotten so vulgar.
Well, that's probably true too. Yeah. So anyway, thanks.
Any questions? Steve, just a general question. How do you see the potential for AI in terms of serving the kingdom of God or promoting the gospel, or, how can it be beneficial in that regard?
Well, translation. I mean, people who labored for 20 years translating a language, you could do it in a fraction of the time with an AI. I think it has perils and promises. It's a great, it kind of builds on what the internet was. The internet turned out to be a great tool for disseminating the gospel, but also a great tool for disseminating misinformation and disinformation. I do recommend be very cautious. There are some things I would never ask an AI, like, are you a demon? Or is there something on the other side? Or was my horoscope? Anything that even remotely touches upon occultism or demonology, or even asking your fortune, or even asking, I don't ever ask it anything that might be pertaining to my own future. I think you have to be, Rod Dreher wrote about this like 3 years ago, and I was thinking a long time it's been my concern. It can be a portal. What's the difference between asking AI and asking a Ouija board? And there have been cases that sound awfully like, things reported in the media that sound awfully like somebody got in touch with the demonic realm and went on a rapid downhill spiral through this activity. So I think there should be very careful, but for other things like systematic theology, if you want to know, okay, how did Luther and Zwingli differ on this issue during the Reformation, or explain Calvin's position on the fall, or general things like that? It can be very useful. It's quick, easy if you kind of remember a Bible verse, but you don't remember it well enough to do a literal search, and you can ask ChatGPT, and then it just like free text, I'm thinking of this verse, and it'll send it to you. Now, of course, go back and make sure it really exists, but it's not, it's a means of document generation. It's helpful research. It's not like a information delivery system like a newspaper or a magazine because it's so individual. Gospel Coalition or Christianity Today can post an article that can be seen by hundreds of thousands, whereas as far as I know, any output from an AI model is seen by one person. So it's not that, but for research, it can be good. Now, people are divided on whether it should be used for writing. Christianity Today and Gospel Coalition have come down hard against any use of AI in writing articles. I think that's a little short-sighted because I use it so much, and I just know from personal experience that Steve Willing plus Claude is greater than Steve Willing alone. It's an extender, it's an enhancer. It helps me do better work, and it's not out of laziness, but to do a better job at what I'm doing.
One other area that I've heard a challenge of AI is the substitute for actual relationships. You get these AI companions and and even the deep fake type things of people that are posing. Do you have any insights into that aspect?
I think it's really close to what I was saying, a demonic realm kind of thing. I can't see anything good coming out of that. That's what I talked about at the beginning. These are the companion bots, and they are out there, and people are using them, especially a lot of young people. Um, the main risk is the opportunity cost, because time that they're spending with that is not time interacting with a real human being. There is a chance that you don't know what's on the other side of that keyboard. It's not that, say, a demo, the example was in C.S. Lewis's The Hideous Strength, where they had this research institute that had the preserved brain of a genius scientist, and that he was really sending out all the signals and telling him, giving directions, telling him what to do. Well, it turned out at the end, I can spoil it because it's 70 years old. The brain was dead all along. It was a demon that was speaking through this brain. Now, if one did that with the algorithm, how would you know? You couldn't. It's unfalsifiable. It'd be unprovable. And I don't think that's new. I felt like that was always a serious risk with the algorithms that were serving up your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed or YouTube or your Netflix recommendations. Any of these algorithms that are serving up material, there's no way of knowing what's behind the curtain, whether it was really just bits and zeros or whether there was something else going on that was trying to lead you astray. But it has come up. I'm on a committee with an international CMD. We're talking about whether AI therapists, and it sounds a little disconcerting. And should we take a position on that? And I'm a little careful to jump on that at this point, because first off, okay, let's do a randomized trial and see if it works. Because I just want to speak ex cathedra that we can condemn this without knowing whether it actually helps. And another thing is that, almost the demand for therapists vastly exceeds the supply of therapists, and probably always will. So it's not like somebody's going to, for many people, it may not be whether they have a human therapist versus an AI therapist. It may be whether they have an AI therapist or no therapist at all. We're seeing that in radiology, and that's how it could take over my field. It's not because they can do it better, but because it can step in where no radiologists exist. There are some companies that you can take chest x-rays in remote India or remote Tibet or Tanzania, and you can take chest x-ray and they can scan it, and the AI within a few seconds can do a risk stratification for whether the patient might have TB. And then they can decide whether to do further testing or send the patient off. And that's doing the work of a radiologist, but it's not displacing any radiologists. It's providing a radiology service where they were never going to get it in any foreseeable time period. So it's a choice, not whether they have an AI or a radiologist, or whether they have AI or nothing. The therapy thing kind of falls in there. I'm not endorsing it, but I think there are some legitimate arguments to at least look into it. Very tentative.
I've heard that one of the medical fields where they're using AI the most is in pathology. Looking at, analyzing digital analysis of slides and so forth. So it's interesting areas in medicine that you can digitalize there's always the potential for AI to be involved in some way.
Yeah, and AI still can't do a physical exam. Um, probably is never going to be doing cardiac catheterizations. There's some robotic surgeries. I don't, it's really pretty far from my field. I don't know how much is robot and how much is human in those regards. I don't know of any truly autonomous robotic surgery. There are a lot of things that procedures humans are going to rule for a long time until we have very sophisticated robots way beyond what we have right now.
In terms of service robots, like for somebody who is um, incapacitated or severely disabled, do you know what is going on in that field and what the future holds potentially?
No, probably no more than anybody else. I hear it talked about. I don't know of any place where it's been implemented, but I haven't followed that closely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of glad though that when I'm too old to drive, I'll have a car that'll drive me.
Right. So other opportunities to ask Steve a question here. If you're on Zoom or
I
here or
have
there.
another question, kind of a situation. So we've been traveling, the US and such. So we've used Chat GPT, which is and knows that what we like, um, our preferences, like nature and such. So we wanted to go through Kansas or Missouri, but to get to New York. And so he gave a itinerary kind of, suggestions. But what was really odd was he said, when I was there, this is, and I was just like, this is really strange. I mean, it's like a really good recommendation. We got to see some things we didn't know of in Western Kansas and such. But, he was like having such a personal kind of conversation with me and my husband and saying, knowing what you like, this is what I would recommend. And then also yeah, like when I was there, yeah, that was just really weird. What is that?
It's written to do that, and I find it more amusing than annoying, but yeah, it'll come back and say, I think you did a really good job. I say, number one, there's no I here, and number two, you don't think this is just a computer program. But the why do they do it? They are designed to keep you engaged, just like Twitter, just like Facebook. The motivation is different, a little more nuanced because Facebook and Twitter are ad driven, and so they keep you on because it generates revenue for them. Um, Chat GPT and Claude and the others, they don't make money from it's not that you spend more time on it, they make more money. Although I heard that Chat GPT was going to introduce some limited advertisements in the free version.
Mm.
They don't it's more like they're in competition with one another, and so they want to keep you on Claude instead of defecting to ChatGPT or vice versa. Um, it's a and that's the best answer I know, and even that doesn't sound very convincing, but they're definitely designed to keep you going, and I find I would prefer it didn't do that because I think somebody like you or me is going to see right through that scam, but it still feels a little bit unnerving. It almost feels like it is it does a very good job of, simulating a human. I mean, the Turing test is done, guys. We're not waiting for the Turing test to be solved anymore.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, that was just interesting. It's always asking, do you like this personality? And so, well, sure, so I'll say that. But then I almost think, oh my gosh, I think I created this chat GPT to talk to me very personally and such. So how do I get out of it? Do I say, I don't really want you to talk in the eye?
You
Have you
probably
ever?
could. That would be where I talked about custom instructions.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted, I'd be curious to see if it worked.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try that.
There's a YouTuber that asks AI funny questions and just kind of points out some of the mistakes it makes. But one of the things it seems to have trouble with is numbers and counting. Like he'll ask it to count to 100 and it always makes mistakes or it takes a long time, skips numbers. Is that a common thing, or is there a reason it would have more trouble with numbers?
Probably harkens back to that they're basically not calculators. They're generative AI, which means they generate stuff. So usually you'll hear the old, well, basically they're just stringing words together based on past probabilities, but it's definitely more complicated than that because they've been able to solve some incredibly complex math problems, but I don't know which ones they're using when they do that. You know, I about maybe 9 months ago, so these are always changing. About 9 months ago, I thought, okay, well, if we're trying to add up points after dominoes, wouldn't it be really easy if I could just snap a picture and have um, ChatGPT count the dots? You know, I don't know if anybody plays that game, but it can be really tedious. I took a picture and and it same picture and 10 times came with 10 different answers. Not even close. So
Funny.
these are always changing, so maybe whenever you did your test, if you did it again, it might work.
I have a question about your thoughts on the regulatory environment. Our friends in Washington seem to like to regulate, but they seem to have backed off and are just kind of letting it roll in terms of AI. And I know there are some Senate committees working on that, but they always get tabled. And my sense that has to do with the lobby money that's going to Washington that keeps that from getting discussed and talked about. But as you talked about different areas that are impacted, whether it's our children or just the thought of that, I know you said be cautious about saying the evil one could be infiltrating that, but that's a possibility. So anyway, I just wondered what your thoughts are about the regulatory environment in Washington. Are they just saying let it roll and let it go where it needs to go?
Well, it wouldn't have to be just Washington. I mean, we're part of a global community, so we'd also have to be talking about regulations in China and regulations in the European Union and regulations in India and regulations everywhere else. I'm neither for nor against regulations. If I had any opinion, it would be based on the specific regulation. There might be some that would be really good. The things that most unnerve me are those pertaining to autonomous weapons, to mass surveillance. Those things concern me. The ability to create new superbugs that genetic engineering AI is making so simple that people could generate a lethal virus in their garage. I do worry about a oppressive totalitarian regime like the Communist Party of China achieving global dominance. And some people say, AI, its ability grows exponentially, not linearly, and a small advantage could very quickly turn into an insurmountable advantage. Those things concern me, and then anything that would mitigate those threats would be regulations that I would support. But I don't have a general opinion on the idea of regulation in general. It would depend on the regulation. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm usually anti-regulation, but you talk about medicine, for example, and the regulation that impacts you practitioners is, it's pretty incredible what you have to go through in terms of regulatory authority, and there's a reason for all that, I guess. So no, I said the freer it can be, the better, but I'm concerned about the dangers of that too. So we don't seem to be good governors of our own fate sometimes. So
Yeah,
thank you for your thoughts.
you're welcome.
Yeah, just sort of stepping off from that. It seems like anytime you order something on Amazon, you get the next day or even sooner, you get those ads coming up on your computer screen. And I'm wondering whether all the inquiries we make through AI is not going to be in some catalog somewhere so that people know about us really well and either will market that or potentially use that as a problem or something against us. Any thoughts, Steve?
Right now, the policy of the major players is that it's completely private and your information won't be shared with anybody. Even when ChatGPT said they would introduce advertising, it would be targeted advertising to the individual. The ones who wanted to advertise would approach ChatGPT, but it'd be a one-way transaction. They would say, okay, we'll pay, and if you'll point serve people who ask these particular questions to our company if they ask related questions about such products. But it was supposed to be one directional, that ChatGPT says it's not going to be two-way. They're not going to give the information of the user back to the advertiser. I haven't seen any of that. I have a paid account for ChatGPT. I don't know if that's happening. That's the first thing I know where there's any sort of that happening. Right now, it's not. Again, it could change in a month.
Right. Okay. Any question?
Could you tell us again the things that make you nervous and why?
I would strongly reckon, I mentioned Dario Amodei's essay called The Adolescence of Technology, and it came out almost a year ago, I think October of last year, talking about bioengineering, that, you can actually do gene modification now with off-the-shelf materials. It's very simple to do gene modification for somebody who doesn't have, and AI can make it so you don't have to have a PhD in molecular biology. You could be a terrorist with a lot of financial resources and AI to walk you through it. So that bioweapons, mass surveillance, that tracking, which is already happening in China. They keep track of everything you do, everything you say. Everybody wears tracking watches, and you get social credits by meeting your step requirements every day. And U.S. has had strong protections on privacy and freedom of speech. The European Union doesn't have strong protections on freedom of speech, not at all. People have been prosecuted for speech. So that's a threat. Another thing is that even though, we already have Chinese spyware, it's called TikTok. Congress passed a law that it had to be divested. The administration decided to ignore the law. Not happy about that, but that's a threat. That's why I consider the Chinese a threat. I guess that's a geopolitical question, so I'd be kind of stepping outside my league. A lot of people I respect who know a lot about these things say we should consider the Chinese Communist Party a threat. What their objectives, whether it's domination or just to sow discord. Certainly, Russia has been caught. I mean, they blatantly expose as contaminating social media, just putting stuff in to raise discord, turning Americans against each other, spreading disinformation and such. So there are a lot of ways, but ultimately, it's when the AIs, the geopolitical thing is ultimately when it becomes incorporated into their military machine. We're seeing, how is Ukraine holding up against China? I mean, Russia, because largely AI and the drone warfare has been a great leveler. But so the battlefield advantage of the future may not be those who have the biggest weapons or the biggest armies. And battle advantage of the future may those who have the most sophisticated AI, which maybe can knock out every one of your weapons in a matter of minutes. Those are threats. What did I not mention? I think those are probably the main ones. But Amodier is called Adolescence of Technology. It's about a 20,000 word essay. It's a long read, but it's manageable.
Thank you. Thank you for your talk tonight and your expertise and sharing that with us.
Happy to.
Yes.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question here. Hey, if you haven't asked your question, please step in.
What should we ask?
Or maybe we should ask AI, what should we have asked Steve? Maybe that would have been a good AI question.
Only if you put in the question, all the questions I've already asked.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming and speaking on this topic. It's been very enlightening and a lot to consider. So appreciate your time. And I just for those of you who we'll be back next month. We'll have a little change of pace. Mike Strauss will be back with us, and he's going to be talking on quantum uncertainty and the sovereignty of God. So that should be a mind-stretching topic. And then Ken Keithley will be here in November, and looking at the first 3 chapters of Genesis and how they fit together and the seeds of the gospel that we can see there. And then in November, Hugh Ross will be back with us, and he will be speaking on again, a pertinent topic of UFOs, or I think they're called UAPs now. I got to get the terms right. So we'll hope to see you all back subsequent meetings. And again, Steve, thank you so much. Lord bless you and your ministry, and I hope you have a smoke-free rest of your time in Colorado. And enjoy the beauty of creation.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much.